So you want to hear the legend of the Michael Jackson kid, huh? Very well. It all began on a dark and stormy night. Actually, I don't know that, because this happened in a cave. Eagle Cave, a favorite wintertime destination of scout troops all over the upper Midwest due to the interior temperature being around 60 degrees year-round. It's not a particularly big or nice cave. It's very wet and muddy, packed with kids that are technically in an enclosed space. But you're not in a muddy hole in the ground in January for comfort. No, you're there for adventure. And all along the cave's main path, there are numerous cracks and crevices that provide the youth with just that. Shortly after arriving and setting up our things in the communal sleeping area, the boys and I sat on a rock near the back of the cave to begin to plan out our future expeditions. And while we were sitting there, we heard a very faint... Now, obviously, when you're in a cave packed with hundreds of people, there's bound to be some weird noises here and there, so we didn't spend too much time dwelling on it. But then we heard it again, only closer this time. It sounded like it was coming down the main path, but it still didn't sound all that close to us, so after a few seconds we went back to our conversation. But then we heard it a third time. This time it was just around the corner. Whatever was making that sound was making its way quickly towards us. We heard footsteps and saw a shadow approaching. And finally we saw a kid come around the corner. He had kind of a smirk on his face as he looked at us and gave us another hee. So obviously this is a very odd interaction, so we weren't exactly sure what to do at first, but eventually we got up to walk over to go talk to him. But of course the moment we did that, he bolts down the pathway with another and we allowed this mysterious and provocative stranger to run away from us without chasing after him and attempting to get any more information from him, and went about our business in a civilized and dignified manner. The end. Or wait a minute. Actually, you're right, it was the opposite of that. With all the twists and the turns, we couldn't see him at all times, but we were guided through the cave by the... We could get a general sense of the direction and distance. Whenever we would catch up to him, he would always find another hole to dive into. We could hear him getting farther and farther away, and eventually we lost him entirely. But we had attention spans like the millennials in boomer comics, so we got over it pretty quickly. So we just went around exploring the cave on our own with no specific objective for a while. But eventually we were back on the main path and we heard it again. We sprinted as fast as we could to the source of the noise, but we got there just in time to see him duck down one of the side paths. But just as we got to the entrance, another troop came from the other side. Remember what I said last time about how every troop has just different versions of the same kids? But that didn't matter this time because we had the same version of one goal. Catch the Michael Jackson kid at all costs. With greater numbers we became a much more dynamic search party. But at every attempt we made, he would always seem to find another crevice to shoot down. But each imitation of the King of Pop only brought more reinforcements to our search. I mean, I'm sure it was only like, 60 kids at the height, but that still was kind of a lot, actually. And yet, despite our ever-increasing numbers, he still managed to keep getting away. Eventually, a kid from another troop got the entire search party together and got us all to agree that we needed to have some kind of coordinated plan. He was much older and wiser than us, probably an 8th grader. He had a pretty dictatorial approach though, so I remember we called him Little Hitler. But anyway, soon we had come up with a plan and were ready to set it in motion. The original group of the boys from my troop were just scouting around somewhere in some deep crack or crevice when we heard that notorious hee. As usual, he got away from us, but unbeknownst to him, that was part of the plan. We got him out onto the main path and started chasing him back towards the mouth of the cave. We chased him to the top of a little stone staircase, and our perfectly executed trap was revealed to him in the form of the dozens standing at the bottom. For the first time since I had been acquainted with him, he looked worried for a second, but after surveying his surroundings, he quickly regained his composure. He grabbed onto the railing of the staircase, flipped around it, and then disappeared into a tiny hole that no one else saw, with one final and we never saw him again. Until we were in the dining hall again for dinner, but nobody cared by that point.